Hi, I'm Mike Handberger with Tricky Fast Studios, and today I'm going to show you about the crafting system in Cat RPG Builder. By the end of this video, you should be able to create recipes and then add the actions needed to craft them so that the player can create whatever item is produced by the recipe. We're going to start with a mostly empty scene. It's got some geometry, it's got a player that has a controller on it, but not much else. So the first thing we want to do is add the inventory service. We can go cat new services inventory service. All right. The next thing, we're going to add an inventory manager to the player. That way the player can actually have inventory. So we want to check off auto expand bag and auto stack stackables. So the auto expand bag will make sure that whenever you pick something up, it'll add a new slot for it if you don't have an open one. And then auto stack stackables means that if you have a stackable item, it'll automatically get stacked when you pick it up. The next thing we want to do is create our potion recipe. So we can do that in the hierarchy by doing right-clicking, hitting cat RPG crafting recipe. And let's move that out here. So one thing to note is that crafting recipes are items, so they have some of the same states. They're a state machine, just like items are, so they have the unequip, unused, and default state, but they also have an on-crafting state. So let's call this health potion or recipe. All right, let's open this up. So the initial state we want to set to default. Let's give it an item name. We don't need a description for now. We're going to make it a regular item. So for this example, I'm going to also show you how to use the default placed item prefab. So that means that we don't have to create a new placed item prefab for each item. We can use one default one and then just create some models for each item that get overridden. So in this case, we're going to do place item model, and we're going to set this to this thing I've already made up. If you look at this quickly, it's really an empty game object with a couple of models in it, right? It's got a cube, and then it's got a sprite render. So if we look over here, it has, oops. It just is a little box with the potion recipe icon on it. Back to the recipe here. We're also going to set the icon. So we're going to do craft health potion here. And then equip prefab we don't need to set. Socket count we don't need to set. Crafted item. So that's important. So we made, in previous videos for the inventory service, we've made a health potion. So let's just drag that in here to crafted item. Now, there's some options under here. We can destroy the recipe after crafting, which is usually the default. That way, once you use it, it's gone. You don't have to check that off. You can keep that unchecked, and then you can use the recipe over and over again. We have a craft duration, how long it takes to craft. We'll leave that at 0. And then we can do wait for complete and allow failure. This allows it to wait for the on-crafting state to finish in order for crafting to be completed. And actually, I believe that there's even a trigger or an action you can use, which is complete craft action. You can also use a fail craft action, and if you have your crafting recipe set up to allow failure, then it can actually fail, in which case the ingredients are consumed and you don't get your crafted item. For now, we're just going to leave those off, and we're going to set the duration to be 0. The next thing that we need to add is our ingredients. So the ingredients are just items that you'd put underneath here. So let's create two ingredient items. So we go cat RPG inventory. These are just regular inventory items. So we're going to call this magic cap. And open this up, set the default, call it a magic cap. Item type, we'll make it stackable. Icon, well, we already have a magic cap icon here. And we happen to have a place item model already created. And then that's really it for that. So now let's just duplicate that and call this one coastal green. Change the name over here. And change the icon. And then drag in the placed item model that we want. And now the next thing we need to do is make sure that all of these things, the ingredients, are prefab. So we're just going to drag those into the project window here. There we go. And once we've done that, we can add them to our recipe as ingredients. Now, if we wanted to require more than one of each, we can set the count right here. Right? But let's just keep it at 1 so that it's simple. And now our recipe is also done. Except for one thing, we do want to have this on use here. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that the player has the ingredients before they can even use it. So we can add a condition directly to use. So there's a can craft condition. Now it's going to put it in a conditional action. We actually don't want that. So we're going to get rid of this conditional action. The can craft condition. So the crafter, we're going to set that to be the player, right? Because the player is always going to do the crafting. And then the recipe is the owner, which is this recipe. So this condition will be checked to see if you can actually even use the item. And then if that works, then we have a craft item action that we can add here. So we want to set the crafter to the player. And then the recipe is, again, the owner. So that's this health potion recipe. We could set up some sounds and some animations, but we're not going to bother with that right now. And at this point, this recipe should be complete. So let's turn that into a prefab. The next thing we want to do is make sure we've set up our inventory service. So since we're not using asset bundles, we need to add all of our items into the inventory service. So we're going to start with the coastal green. Oops. Health potion, the recipe, and then magic caps. Okay. Now that that's done, the next thing to do is to add some placed items for these so that we can just pick them up off the level. So since we're using the default placed item prefab, which by the way we should also set, we need to set that on the inventory service. So I've created one here. We'll look at that in a second, but you just need to drag that in there. So here's what it looks like. It's the same as a placed item that we've gone over in other videos. So it is a state machine. It has 2 triggered actions. One trigger is for the press trigger. So whenever anybody clicks on it, it's going to execute the pickup item action. And you can also use interactions for this, but we're just going to go a little simpler here. So the pickup item, the target's a player, and the item is the owner. We could specify a slot, but we haven't. And then we have another triggered action for when it's actually picked up. And in that case, we're looking at the target is the owner. And then we do a destroy object action. So as soon as you pick this up, it goes away. Now, one thing we're going to need to set is this item. So let's turn this into a coastal green. And then we need to add the actual geometry. So we can add this pickup item here. Let's take a look at that. Yep, looks good. So now let's duplicate that, move it over a little bit. And then instead of the item being coastal green, we'll make this the magic cap. And then we'll get rid of this pickup we'll add the magic cap pickup. And then we will duplicate it one more time. This time, we're going to add our recipe as the item. Get rid of the pickup. Add our recipes placed item. Let's move this up a little bit. And I think we're ready to go. Let's give it a try. It fell over a little. Okay, so now we can come over here. We have our inventory window that we've talked about in another video. So we can pick up the recipe, both the ingredients, then we have inventory, and we have all three of those things. So now if we click use, you can see that it got rid of the recipe and the 2 ingredients, and now we have a health potion. Now let's take a minute to improve this a bit, or change it, let's say. If you remember, I talked about how you can have this on crafting state, which will actually determine if you can actually craft it, and you can fail the craft and that sort of thing. So let's turn that on. Let's wait for complete and allow failure. Okay, so let's just make a little UI window that has 2 buttons on it, and one of them will complete the craft and one of them will fail it. So let's create a new panel. Let's turn this so we can look at this new panel here. And let's make that pretty small right in the center here. Let's go down a little bit. There we go. We got our panel. Let's add a couple buttons to it. Alright, so we got 1 button. Let's move that up a bit. So we'll call this success. And we'll make another one called fail button, and we'll spell button right. So our success button will say success, and our fail button will say fail. Let's move our fail button down. All right. So let's make this into a state machine. And we'll add a button trigger. And then under that, we will add our success button. So we'll add a complete craft action. Whoops, let's click on that. So for the recipe, we are going to say, and we'll say use binding. And then on the success button, we will add a data binding base. And we'll do the same thing on the fail button. And we got to make that into a state machine. And we can just copy, oops. We can just copy this into here. But get rid of the craft complete action and turn that into a fail craft action. Set that again to the binding. All right. So let's save this panel off. Oops. We want to do one more thing. Actually, once you hit the button, we also want to get rid of the panel. Oh, and we probably don't want to call it panel here. We want to call this, we call it, so craft window. So under this triggered action, you're going to use destroy object, target owner, but then we're going to do path, and we'll do dot dot. So we get the craft window, and then we can copy that, paste that over here, and now we can apply that. We could rename this to craft window. One other thing we want to make sure we do is on the craft window, we want to add a data bind base there as well. And apply that, and then we can get rid of our craft window. So now what we want to do is on crafting, we'll add a spawn action. Target is none. Parent is named, and then we'll drag in the name the main canvas. Prefab is our craft window, right? And then we want to do one more thing. Set UI context, target named craft window, and the new owner is going to be our current owner. Sure, the new targets doesn't really matter. All right, so that should do that. And let's hit apply and disable that. Let's give that a try. All right, so pick up that, click on the inventory, ready, use. So if we hit success, it should work. And now we have a health potion. If we try again, if we hit fail, it shouldn't work. But if we look at our bag, our health potion recipe is now on equip, so it's gone through that. It's obviously gone through our crafting, but it hasn't worked, and it ate our ingredients, so we weren't able to use it anymore because that condition has failed. One thing you could do instead of this obviously fake UI for the crafting failing and succeeding is you could add a mini game there. You could have some sort of percent or dice roll. It's really up to you what you want to do with that. We just give you the tools to make it happen. So I think that wraps it up for crafting. In this video, you should have learned how to set up crafting recipes, add ingredients, make them so that you can craft them using the use action on items, and also how to make a craft like minigame or failing and succeed based on some other external source. I hope you found this video informative and useful. Let us know in the comments if there are other videos or tutorials you'd like to see. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media for the latest videos and other news. For more information on Cat or Cat RPG Builder and how they can help you build and prototype RPGs faster, please visit catgamebuilder.com. I'm Mike Hanverger with Tricky Fast Studios. Thanks for watching.